DC Multiverse!
How's it going, super friends? Welcome back to my channel and to my better late than never review of the McFarlane Toys Batman Last Night on Earth wave of figures. We're going to look at all 4 figures and build the Bane in this video, so buckle up, it's going to be a big one. Here we go. So all 4 of these figures look really fantastic. It's not the wave that I asked for, but I'm certainly glad that I managed to get my hands on it. Scarecrow, Wonder Woman, Straight Jacket Batman, and Omega Batman. Let's look at them all individually, starting with Scarecrow, who comes with the torso to the collect-to-build Bane figure, and also the trading card, which is also the cover to Batman Last Night on Earth issue number 2, of which there's also a short data file on the back of the card, which you could pause to read if you like, and if not, well, I'll just add it to the stack. Now here's a quick glimpse of that torso. We're not going to spend much time looking at it because we're going to take a better look at it once we put this guy together. We are, however, going to look closer at the Scarecrow. Oh yeah, he also comes with a figure stand too. That's why he's floating there and not standing on his hands. And as usual, I say this every time, they're okay. They're not the greatest. It's a reasonable figure stand. But the Scarecrow figure does look very cool. It's a lot more creepy to hold this guy in your hand than to just see him inside the pages of Batman Last Night on Earth. You can see all of his innards a lot more than I realized that you could. And he's just so mechanical and grody and creepy and dirty looking. His sculpt looks really fantastic. Let's look at it up close. So you can see his intestines and torso and ribcage and tailbone all inside the jacket there. The jacket, although made of rubber, is actually pretty convincing to the idea of it looking like leather. And he has this here hosey-do on the back of his bag. His bag hat. His bag mask. Let's see if we can pull it off. Ooh, we can, and that looks grody. That is one creepy looking heavy metal-ish character. Looks like he should be on the cover of an Iron Maiden CD. And just because it's inside of this dome doesn't mean they didn't pay attention to the paint job, because this looks really nice. Oh, that's hilarious. It's actually really, really well articulated too. My goodness, I wasn't expecting that. He's got those big mechanical claw hands too with the syringes on the end. And not every finger is articulated though. You've got 2 fingers right here and then 2 fingers right here. They're on the same hinge, and the thumb doesn't have any articulation whatsoever. But darn, these are sculpted really cool. They look fantastic. And even up his wrists right here, you can see how it connects to his arms. Yeah, these are cool. And his arms, the articulation for his arms, that's not too bad actually. Single jointed. They probably could have done double, but I'm not going to complain too much. And yeah, it also rotates. And just as a side note, when you do decide to put the red bag over his creepy, grody, cavity-infested, rotting flesh carcass of a face, the little noose is actually supposed to go around the bottom of the bag because, well, technically in the story, that's what holds it on. So that's Scarecrow figure number 1 in the series, and now it's time to move on to figure number 2, Wonder Woman, who comes with her figure stand, her trading card, and a sword. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot. She also comes with the arms, the big, beefy, skull-crushing arms to the collect-to-build Bane figure. The trading card is taken directly from the inside of issue number 1 of Batman Last Night on Earth, and it showcases Greg Capullo's excellent artwork. While the back has that data file, you could pause to read that if you'd like to. If not, I'll put it in the stack, and we'll look at the figure. Wonder Woman looks pretty accurate to the source material. Maybe not necessarily exactly like one of Greg Capullo's drawings came to life in 3-dimensional action figure form, but still a very good rendition of this version of the character. And her sword looks pretty decent too. Here's what the hilt looks like. It's got that kind of Excalibur-ish look to it. The blade, which has, what is that, 4 narrow fullers all up the blade like that? Some people call that the blood groove, but that's actually to give the sword stability. Not that it's actually working, because this bad boy is as squishy as it comes. It is nice the fact that it does fit tidily in her scabbard like that, and it can just hang at her side. And overall, this figure looks really, really nice. I like that cape. The texture might be a little bit too thick. Like if this was an actual cape someone was wearing, I could see the fabric actually having this texture. But this should be shrunk down. So I think it's cool that there is texture. It just seems a little bit too sweatery. Like she's wearing a great big red sweater over her shoulders. But darn if it isn't sculpted nice. I definitely have to give credit where credit's due here. For some reason in this story they decided that Wonder Woman should be wearing a super bustier crop top, but the way that it's sculpted actually looks very much like the way it does in the source material. Let's lift up that big cape and see what's back there. Oh no, her leg came off. Well, that's never happened to any of my McFarlane figures. You can see that it's a pretty simple fix. It's just a little hinge there. Let's pop it back on. There we go. Easy fix. Just a little hinge up in the inside here of her battle skirt, which looks fantastic, by the way. Kind of weird that they chose to make the dagger all blue. I feel like that could have been painted possibly a little bit. Maybe even the same thing with the scabbard. Just something there to break up the blue. But it does look well sculpted, and you can see, as with the rest of the figure, various textures on various parts of her around-the-waist battle skirt harness. Her knee armor and boots as well look, although very clearly painted and not dirty at all, they definitely look very battle-worn. And again, more textures. That's one thing I really like about Todd's figures, is that all of the figures have various textures all over them. They're not just solid and flat and straight. They don't just sculpt the details and then paint the details. They actually add texture to a lot of the details. So generally, fabric looks fabric-y, metal looks metal-y, leather looks leathery, and so on and so forth. Now the head sculpt is something that I'm just a wee bit torn on. I think that it looks good as far as quality goes. The skin looks like skin, her lips look lifelike, and so do her eyes. You got the shaven hair all around where her braided bottom mohawk is. All that looks really, really nice for what it is. The only thing that I would say they may have gotten a little bit wrong with this figure is the fact that Wonder Woman right down here on her cheek is supposed to have some sort of purplish color disfiguration and scarring. Real quickly now, let's just do Wonder Woman's articulation. Her head's on a ball joint, and that little ball peggy and head actually gets a pretty reasonable range of motion, and the same can be said for her torso, which is also on a pretty free-ranging ball peg there. That is, yeah, that is actually really, really good. Her arms are on those little rounded hinges that we all know that McFarlane puts out on their figures, as well as there's a little butterfly right there that kind of moves out of the way to continue the look of the figure. She's got a bicep swivel, double jointed elbows, and I always like to test these out. How much can they crunch? Yep, stop hitting yourself. There is some articulation down here in the lower waist, although it is very, very tight. I probably wouldn't even use it, to be honest, but it is there. And then, of course, we know that down here she's got that McFarlane groin. Her battle skirt definitely gets in the way. It's just part of the nature of having a skirted character. They can really only splay out about that far. And you saw that my leg actually came off at one point, so I'm going to be a little bit careful. But it's a reasonable range of motion. Does she have a... Nope, doesn't have a thigh cut, but they do swivel right there at the top a little bit. And not all McFarlane figures can you say that about. She's got double jointed knees, and I will point out that the skin color pegs on this side are really kind of an ugly looking oversight. But anyway, they do crunch up. Yeah, that's nice. And then, of course, we have the ankles, and the ankles have the little rounded ball hinge, as well as toe articulation. So, yeah, that's what she got. So now let's move on to the next figure, Batman, who comes with a billy club, a Joker head in a jar, and also the trading card. Not to mention the head of the collect-to-build Bane figure, and also both steel-knuckled rock'em sock'em fists as well. Oh yeah, and a figure stand. I think it goes without saying that each figure's gonna come with a figure stand. I really just want to stop telling people they come with a figure stand. Now the trading card is a scene taken directly from the first issue of Batman Last Night on Earth, while the back, as usual, has a short data file on this version of Bruce Wayne, which you can pause to read right now if you'd like to, otherwise it's going in the stack. And then of course we can't forget the accessory of the ever-laughing, joking, talking, will never shut up Joker head in a jar. An interesting accessory, there's no doubt, although I will say mine, just as well as all the rest of them, A, looks nothing like the source material. This guy looks really too old and haggled, and B, the eyes look just, something looks quite, not right about how they've been painted, but I think overall it's a good accessory. I do like it, I just don't think it looks like it does in the comic book. Now as for this suit that Batman's wearing, the restraint jacket from the Wayne Foundation Arkham Asylum, he only wears this in the first chunk of issue number 1. And for the rest of the story, he just wears the Batman Rebirth uniform. And though likely not a bat suit I would ever want to see exist in comic books at any time, any place ever, except for in the beginning of Batman Last Night on Earth, I still think it looks pretty darn good. It's a restraint jacket, and you can tell because you've got these here leather straps all along the back here that would ordinarily tie around his arms and, well, just generally restrain him and keep him from getting into mischief and from hurting himself. The belt around his waist is actually something that he stole from Sergeant Bullock, that big utility belt. In the comic book, it says that he actually had to wrap it around his waist twice. The Billy Club he nicked from a police officer when he was first escaping Arkham Asylum. And the helmet, well, that's actually a shock therapy restraint bridle. That's what they call it in the issue. And it's sculpted really, really well. I can't think of anything about the sculpted detail or even the paint apps on this that I would change. I think it looks pretty good. And really the whole figure looks really good. You can almost feel the texture of this fabric being soft and yet hard like a canvas. That's how well this is sculpted. This is the level of detail. You've got these here buckled scallops right there on each of his forearms. They look pretty good. His pants look all kind of dirty and roughed up. His boots that he stole off of Captain Gordon, because, well, that's where he got them from. On his way out of escaping the asylum, he nicked his boots. Well, they look pretty good too. On par with the rest of the figure as far as sculpted detail goes. A very cool looking figure, no doubt. Now let's check out the articulation. The waist articulation for this guy is definitely strange. Like, I'm pretty sure it's the regular old kind of body articulation that Todd puts in the rest of his figures. It spins around and bobbles. I get why they decided to have the only point of articulation right here at the top of that utility belt. It's because that would really break up the whole look of this restraint jacket. It's actually not too bad. I mean, he can't really bend down to tie his shoes to save his life, but how many of our figures really can? And then for the arms, each arm has those rounded hinges, a little butterfly thing, bicep swivels, crunchy double jointed elbows. Wow, that is a lot more crunchy than I thought it was going to be, right up like that. And then you've got those little round hinges in the wrist there. So we know pretty much what's going to be happening in the arm department here. And then we have the below the belt articulative action, and we know exactly what we're going to get here. The question is really, how much does this get in the way? It's all right. Wow, that's a lot more than I thought it was going to get. That's actually, okay, no real complaints there. That's actually pretty good. And then they've included double jointed knees with him. How much more crunchy can they possibly get? Calf to the back of the leg. And of course, he's got the little rounded hinges there and toe articulation. And finally, Batman's got that ball joint in the head. And considering he's got this great big collar in the way, that's not too bad. He can stick his face under his collar when it's cold to keep his chin warm, or he can look up. That's all right. Could be worse, could be better. And now, let's look at Omega Batman. Old, jaded, seeking control. He comes with 2 closed punchy fists, the trading card, and both of Bane's legs for the collect-to-build Bane figure. The trading card is actually an image taken directly from issue number 3 of Batman Last Night on Earth, while the back, as always, showcases a data file for this version of Batman. Honestly, if you haven't read the story, you should pause to read this one. This one's interesting. Let's just put that in the stack and look closer at the figure. Todd's sculpting team has done a great job recreating this particular version of Bruce Wayne. He looks absolutely comparable to the original source material, and although this is a Batman figure I never asked for, I certainly think that he did a very good job with it. Now, while the red lines have not actually been sculpted all over his body, because the arms and the legs, it's just painted on detail, they have been sculpted onto his torso, midsection, and lower half, along with this kind of diamondy pattern. It looks really, really swell. It really brings out the whole sculpt of this figure, the muscle tone of this character. And you might notice that there actually is a little bit of texture to the black. It's not just a straight black. There's a little bit of texture there. Even on Batman's cape, there is a little bit of bat texture on this cape. Gonna say though, this is What is the point of a cape this short? This Batman's noodle noggin looks pretty good. It's a really simple design, so the one important thing they had to get right with this figure was the shape of his head. If the shape wasn't right, then this figure in general just wouldn't look right. And I think that they did a fine job in crafting this Batman's face. Though this Batman doesn't really come with any accessories, it is nice to know that we can change off his open hand and his grabby hand. Also, why does he come with a trigger finger hand as a default when he doesn't come with a firearm? With two fistly hands, which is nice. I like it when a figure comes with two closed fighting fists. You need to give superhero figures two closed fighting fists. All the time, always, all the time. Now, how this Batman's articulated? Well, let's find out together. We can see both the waist and torso have points of articulation. And the real question is, how useful is that torso articulation going to be? We know that with McFarlane, it can be kind of hit or miss how useful it is. That's not too bad. That's all right. I kind of feel like bending down is one area that Todd's figures seem to lack a little bit in. They can't usually bend down very far. Just side to side fairly well, and sometimes back. It is nice that he does have the rotation there, rather than just back and forth like an ab crunch. And the waist articulation is fully realized as well. It can go round and round. It also has, well, it's a ball joint, so it's got ball joint motion. So the whole torso of this figure actually, when combined, actually is really well articulated. That head's on a ball peg, and it does a very, very good job of articulating up and down and all around, so absolutely no complaints. We can see that this Batman has the rounded joint in the armpit, the bicep swivel, the double jointed elbow, and the rounded joint in the wrists, as well as this kind of articulation here in the groin that every single McFarlane Toys figure has, as well as double jointed knees. They crunch up nicely, and he's got the rounded hinge in the ankles and the toe articulation. And in all actuality, he's probably the easiest one to pose around too, because his body is the easiest to fiddle with. Alright, so now that we've looked at all the figures, now it's time to put together Bane. And I figured the most important part to show is actually putting these legs on the figure, because on Instagram I saw a lot of people having very serious problems with keeping these attached to his body. They kept falling off and such. So let's do that together. I am assuming that this would actually be better achieved with a blow dryer, because people are saying they just keep falling off. And my guess is that it's because they're not getting them on the pegs all the way. Let me just try without using any heat. I don't hear any clicking, and they should click into place. Well, no, they come off really easy. So now it's time to heat them up. That's one. And that's two. And Bane is built. First I used the blow dryer to soften the plastic, and then, when that wasn't quite enough, I actually submerged his legs and his fists in hot, steaming, boiled water. And while, as you can see, it actually did put the figure together nicely, he fits together really swell, I will say that when you try to actually use any of those articulation points, you can already see it comes off just like that. So you can see that problem that a lot of people were having where the limbs just came off so easily. Yeah, that's an actual thing. That's not just people not putting Bane together properly. That's an actual design issue. The little knob right here with the lip around the edge, and that little ridge you can see on the inside of this articulation piece really just aren't enough to make this limb, this connection point, that stable. So, unfortunately, in some ways, you get a posable statue. And please, make no mistake, there actually is an articulation point in there. But the rubber of his pants really does get in the way, but there really is an articulation point there. It's just rendered fairly useless by the whole legs issue. And the same thing with my Bane's fists. Yeah, they fit in the hole perfectly, and I did the whole boil and pop thing, and they just don't clutch properly in there. There's not enough to grip. And believe me, it's not just me. I've even taken a rubber mallet. And really, nothing seems to be enough. Not heat, nor friction, nor force, nor cold could hold Mr. Dumpty together again. Or something like that. Which is a pity because, I mean, he looks really, really good. The design for this Bane is nice. Although, he's not quite accurate to the source material in the fact that his skin's not supposed to be gray. It's supposed to be kind of skin color. I gotta say though, one area where this figure excels so much is in the actual attention to the sculpted detail. Like usual, the textures and all of the details look really, really fantastic. That it really excels at that with this figure. The shirt looks like a shirt, leather looks like leather, fabric looks like fabric. And even the armbands around his arms, and his wristbands, and his gloves. For the head sculpt, something that I never picked up on the first time I read the story through is that Bane's mask, his luchador mask, actually has a big bat right on the front of it, which is, I guess that makes sense, because he's Omega Batman's agent. He just kind of does whatever he says, so yeah, that bat would be there, wouldn't it? Holy crud, Bane just fell out of my hand, and when he landed on the table, his fist fell off, and his stinking leg fell off again. Get on there. Ugh. Now, something that Stupid Brad missed while he was doing his first initial review of Scarecrow at the beginning of my recording session today is that he gets a little tummy boner that sticks out. It's a little piece of his intestines that's just kind of sculpted in there to be a little bit hidden. I thought it looked kind of weird. It sticks out like that, and you just stick this little pegaroo in the hole like that, and now you've got Scarecrow on his back. Oh, let's put his hand back on. And then we get piggyback ride Scarecrow. He can just sit right on his back there like he's supposed to, like he did in the source material, just like that. I kind of wish he sat up a little bit higher, like it was somehow positioned so that he was looking over Bane's shoulder a little bit more rather than just, you know, almost directly behind him. And these little hands, you can kind of position them to go around Bane like so. That's all right. Let's kind of stick his thumb around Bane's armpit. Yeah, that's okay. That looks all right. So anyway, that's everything unboxed and looked at. All four figures and the collect-to-build Bane figure. Could I suggest these to you as a DC fan? Someone who collects DC Multiverse figures? Or just somebody who is a Bat fan who is looking to pick up every single Batman action figure ever created in the history of Batman action figures? Well, yes and no. I think that first off, all four figures are certainly fantastic in their quality, as usual, as to be expected with McFarlane. They all look very closely like the source material from Batman Last Night on Earth, so there really is no complaints in the likeness department, except for that Joker head. That's kind of hideous. However, if you're somebody who really just wants all of the basic vanilla characters as they appear in the basic comic book continuity, and you're really not into buying characters based off of, in this case, a 3-issue Black Series Elseworlds-ish kind of story, then I don't know if I could suggest them to you. But if you're a little bit more open-minded, and you're looking for different versions of a lot of the same characters that Todd's made, like Wonder Woman and Batman, along with a chance to own a pretty rockin' looking Bane figure and a really weird, creepy, psycho-looking Scarecrow, then I can suggest these to you. But anyway, that's my story and I'm sticking to it. Hopefully you found this review to be an entertaining, interesting, possibly even insightful waste of time for the day. If you did, you know where all the buttons are that do all the stuff, and I will see you with the next one. Have a fantastic, super awesome DC day, everybody, and take care.